Hello and welcome back. We are going to be opening Crimson Vow packs. Set just dropped. Honeymoon Hearse is actually a really good card. The enemy lands are good. It's going to make it so you can do 3-color decks fairly easily. Oh, Soren. Hello. This is a really good card. So I suppose I should actually be looking at some of these other cards as well. This isn't very, like, it's not terrible, but it's also not very good. Because it's a sorcery. If this was an instant, even at 4 mana, this would see a lot of play. This isn't bad if you're in a humans deck. Mind Leech Ghoul's not terrible. Ill-Tempered Loner is a really good card. I think it's going to end up going into the Werewolf deck in place of some of the other 4-drops. I think it's better than Arlen. So yeah. Cradle of Safety. It's okay. It's a one-time hexproof. Give it +1/+1. It's okay. Cigar's Imprisonment is actually really good. This card's not terrible. Most of the Disturb cards in this set aren't terrible. They're just kind of banking on stuff living. Point of discussion's pretty good. This will be a really good draft card because the blood tokens. I'm not sure what the blood tokens are going to do as far as for standard. I think you might see some stuff. That's a little expensive, but it's not terrible. Headless Rider, Zombie. Alright, that's a pretty good card. Whenever this or another non-token zombie create a zombie. Yeah, that's pretty good. And it looks like they got rid of the decay, which really is what was holding back some of the zombies in the last set. It's okay. When this becomes a target of a spell or ability, draw a card. Oh, you control it. No. This really needs to be your opponent in order for you to draw a card for that to be any good. So this is just like the Dinosaur Slayer from Ixalan, where it's an okay body. It might be good enough in draft, but it's just not a very good card. It's too defensive. Card's okay. It's okay. Crushing Canopy is a reprint. Blood Fountain, I think, is actually a pretty good card. It gives you the blood counter, which discard a card, sacrifice to draw a card. This is another card that's okay. The protection from vampires is pretty good. Just the XX for enchantments is kind of weak. And the fact that it gives protection from vampires is also pretty good. This will be a limited house, just because if they're in black or red, really, or white, they're going to be in vampire. They might not be based on it, but there's going to be vampires there. Wedding security is okay. He lets you spend the blood and just draw a card as opposed to discarding a card to draw a card, which is good. It's not terrible. Card's not very good. Eminent Will is a reprint, which is always fairly good. So this was printed for the guy that where your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness, not their power. So essentially, you get a 14 or 13/13. That art is trippy. Oh, that's actually really, really good. And limited, if you can get just a handful of these, that's really good. That's pretty good. Oh, I love Howlpack Piper. So the downfall is that you can only do this as a sorcery. But realistically, like if you've got mana, you can go. If you play this on turn 5, on turn 6, you can put 3 werewolves into play. Like this, that could just be super broken. I like Child of the Pack. Just create wolves. Other creatures you control get +1/+0. Goes from a 2/5 to a 5/5. It's all good. Carrier Bat's not terrible. Let's return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand just for gaining some life. Ragged Recluse I don't think is all that powerful. Unless you're playing stuff to make you discard, which there's stuff. But then she's not going to flip, and if she doesn't flip, then you got a 2/1 for 2, which isn't bad, but it's just not very good. And if she does flip, it's okay. It's just a 3/3 with Siphon. Card's okay. That's not a very good card. And that's any card it needs to be. Probably end up making a Kaya. Blood Type Harvester I think is a good card. Like it's not overly broken, especially since you can't as an instant kill something, but it does make them have to deal with him before they can play stuff if you've got a bunch of blood tokens out, which is sometimes good enough. This card's pretty good. Give target creature Death Touch. I wish this had Flash. Oh, that's actually not too bad. So I like Dorothea, Vengeful Victim. 2 mana for a 4/4 that can attack or block once. So realistically, you attack with it, and then you disturb it and turn any creature you want into Geist of Saint Traft, which, as everybody should know, is really good. But instead of it being an angel, it's a spirit, which is a bit more relevant right now. Bloodswords Squires is okay. Like Like realistically, this is better in late game where you only discard one card. To flip it, giving it indestructibles, okay. It's not great for the cost because it's colorless and a black as opposed to just discard. But if it's later in the game and you already got 4 creatures in the graveyard, you don't have to discard a creature to flip her. You just have to have 4 creatures in the graveyard. And then Bloodsworn Knight can be super powerful because at minimum you're looking at a 4/4. And again, the later in the game, the better it gets. This is okay. It's a shock that exiles, which is never bad, but it's always just okay. Sporeback Wolf is, again, it's okay. I don't think the having a 2/4 on your turn that's a 2/2 not on your turn is all that great. Realistically, if it was a 2/2 on your turn and then a 2/4 on your opponent's turn, I think it's better. Training is an interesting mechanic to me, just because you want to attack with lower creatures and higher creatures. It's like the Boros one, where if you attack with a creature that's got higher power, put a 1/1 counter on it, except for any creature that's bigger will pump your trainer, your creatures with training. That card's okay. It's no different than like the dragon cards, which are okay. They're not great. Eh. This card's okay, except for unless you're gonna play this and then Wrath the board. I think you're only looking at getting 2 or 3, which 2 or 3. I mean, that's still 2 or 3 draws, and then once it's empty, you pay the last one, sacrifice it to get that third or fourth draw, which is okay. But ideally, you will play that and then wipe the board so you can get all the draws you need. This card's okay. If you have no other blood payoff, this card's okay. It potentially attacks as a 5/5. The problem I have with this card is that you have to sacrifice it when you announce her as an attacker. Which means that they then are allowed to, I'm going to throw a 1/1 in, 2 1/1s in front of it, or I'm going to throw 2 big creatures that you can't kill in front of it, and like they get to kind of decide how to block a 5/5 as opposed to how to block a 3/3 that's potentially a 5/5. Target creature. That's okay. It's not terrible. So this is a good early drop, which is something that the vampire deck actually needs is more 1-drops that are kind of relevant. And the fact that this creates a blood token and deals 1 damage when it comes into play is what makes this better. That's not bad. So if this was just target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, the end, it's okay. For the same mana, we would get 3 and it had flashback. But now that you get 2 blood later in the game when you got a bunch of land, let you cycle through those and stuff like that for new cards. So I mean, this is just like most or any of the spell carrying devils, demons, and all the other stuff. But instead of it just being 2/0, it's 2/2, so it makes it harder to kill. It's okay. It's 5 mana for 3/3. This card is phenomenal. So whenever you create a blood token, if you control 5 or more blood tokens, transform this. Realistically, you could cast this, sacrifice a creature, flipper, so now you got a 3/3 instead of just a 1/1 or a 2/1. Move to combat, create a bat. All is good. Alright, I think I'm going to stop going over the commons and uncommons. Because I will be doing drafts on here, and then I can discuss cards then. So let's open 10. Alright. So this card is okay. If you have multiples in play, then you can actually lock out players, which is really good. But one by itself is okay. Patchwork Crawler, exile target creature card from your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter. So this card is another one where it's okay. You would have to eliminate activated abilities, and a lot of them are more on the triggered abilities and stuff like that, so it's okay. It's not terrible. 2 mana 1/2. You can make it bigger. It's pretty good. Made a Dishonor, I think, is one of the better cards. Lets you, sacrifice artifacts and creatures to essentially speed the game up. Overcharged Amalgam. Counterspell. I hate counterspells. So I'm not going to talk about, counterspells make it so you can't play, or make it so your opponent can't play the game. I think there's better ways of actually controlling what's going on than playing counterspells. If you ever watch, I very rarely, even when I'm playing Katie from Brass City Games in our Brawl, almost never have counterspells. I'll have bounce, I'll have other things. I don't like just, you don't get this spell, because then they're not playing the game, and this is a game. Trample Haste. Yeah, this card's not bad. And you get a 4/4 for 4 with Trample and Haste. Seems good. If you make it up to 7 mana, now you have an 8/8 Trample Haste, and your other creatures get +1/+1 in Trample Haste. This is good in the early game. This is good in the late game. Oh, this is actually really good. So, the Ghastly mimicry side of this is really good, because if your opponent has a really good creature, throw this on their creature, because then they're not going to want to deal with it, and you could potentially outrace them, because you could get 1, 2, 3, 4 of their really good creature. So this is okay. I don't see that cleave being super relevant. The red-blue decks right now are already playing Alrund's Epiphany. I don't see this being better, but they might run 3 of Alrund's Epiphanies and 2 of this, because sometimes all they need is that 3 mana extra turn. So I think this card's actually really good. And I think you're going to see a lot of decks playing Voldaren Estate. I think that's funny. This is the first time I got one of these, so they didn't say either one is the first because they came at the same time. Um, if you discard a card, get a zombie, it's okay. This is a good wrath. The only time that this wouldn't be a good wrath is if they had, more than 13 creatures, but if that's the case, this isn't helping you anyway. I don't think this is a very good card at all. Because of training, this might not be too bad. I think this card is actually really good. And then enemy lands are always good. Wonder what. That's a good card too. Oh, why'd I do that? Ooh, I like that land. I'm a big fan of anything green-black. Alright, let's see. Exile card from graveyard. When you do choose one, remove X counter from target permanent where X is the mana value of exiled card, or target creature opponent controls gets -X, -X. I don't think that should have been mythic. You only get to do it twice. I mean, unless you find ways of looping it into play, and it costs 6 mana. That's okay at best. This costs too much mana, but this is a really good. Yeah, if you have any way of just putting out a ton of creature tokens, you could get a bunch of 6/6s. This is a really good card. It's not like the greatest because it is 7 mana, but this is still a really good card. If there's some token deck that you're playing, you have no reason not to run that. This exploit's not great, and neither is the damage to you for. Like, if you're running this because you're afraid of planeswalkers, more likely than not, you're exploiting himself. Gambit again. Exile creature card. So Dollhouse of Horrors could be really good if you got, like, if you exile Tullivar's Packmaster, Tullivar. Like, there's a ton of things that where you're just like, oh, I want this. Granted, you could only ever get the front side of them, but that's okay. I'll probably play that in one of the brawl decks that we end up building. Odric the Bloodcursed. He's not very good. Because he's an enter the battlefield to get blood tokens, and then you have to have flying, first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, trample, or vigilance, and you only get one for each of those keywords. So at most you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can get up to 12. But again, you have to have those keywords in play. So, Plus, what do you need with 12 blood tokens? I mean, even if you've got the rare that lets you sacrifice them, the Made of Dishonor. Like, that would be the only reason I would play that. I don't want any more Alchemist Gambits. I'll never play them in Standard. Mostly because I don't really play Standard all that much. Oh, that's actually really good. Can't block. No big deal. If she deals combat damage to a player, you get a blood. If she dies, you can sacrifice 2 blood to return her from your graveyard to play. That's good. Alright, let's see. That is the 4th. So what am I missing? Green, blue. I didn't get the green, blue land. That's okay. I'll end up making it for something. Oh, right, yeah. As long as you play red, white, you can just put as much into X as you want. Otherwise, it's just based on the number of creatures you control. So this card actually works in anything white. Works best in red, white, obviously. Put deal X damage, gain X life. This card is terrible. Because you have to be playing a domain deck. So you have to play 5 colors to have this be okay. And then for 6 mana, you get a 6/6. Meh. That you can only do as a sorcery. That's, like, it's not very good. I mean, I think Winds of Fate or Wheel of Fortune would have been better. But if you've just got a ton of land, I suppose you could cast this. But I don't actually see this unless you've got some reanimator where you want to put a ton of stuff in your graveyard so you can bring it back on the cheap. It's not a very good card. Old Rutstein. He's okay. This, I think, will be really good because it'll prevent people from casting the second spell. Alright, well, I'm going to open this one, but that is going to be it for this video. It's my thoughts on most of the rares, stuff like that. Oh, I hate when it does that. I hate glitches. I'll have to restart just to make it go away. I will be doing a premiere draft of Crimson Vow. It's gonna happen. I've got at least two lined up. I should, even on doing bad, I should get at least 2 wins. And then we'll have this, unless I want to unlock, which I do at some point. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.